Morning, Greg. So we're here today because we're wanting to create a series of vlogs about
Mhm.
our business called Connect, Listen, Be With. So I might start by introducing myself. So I'm Sonia Botten. You can find more information on both of our LinkedIn profiles. I currently work for an organisation around supporting a suicide bereavement group, and I run a range of mental health suicide awareness type training. Very passionate in the space. I'll get you to introduce yourself.
Morning, Sonia. Thank you for setting all this up for us to have this conversation. So, I'm Greg Roberts. I have my own small business, grief and trauma support, that specialises in grief and trauma counselling, bereavement support for people, and also have a long history sort of working in suicide bereavement as well.
Thank you. I might just go ahead and touch base or acknowledge the fact that I am wearing a very bright shirt, and it's actually by an organisation called Trade Mutt, and they raise awareness amongst tradespeople, awareness around suicide prevention, and a lot of the money that they raise through the merchandise that they sell go towards paying for people to be able to get counselling support. So today we thought that we might just give a bit of an overview on what I think we've decided we call a small business that we've established, but really it's also part of a larger or broader grassroots movement. I think we certainly don't feel like we're the only ones out there having conversations and thinking about frameworks, I guess. There are a lot of other people doing the same. So I might ask you to kick off with a bit of a summary about what drew you to want to set this up.
Um, so for me, the small organisation that we're sort of getting up and running is called Connect, Listen and Be With. And when we were talking earlier, I was saying I can distinctly remember when the ideas crystallised around this. But it really came out of both of us working in the area of suicide postvention, which is working with people after there's sadly been a suicide and supporting people and understanding that that also is a prevention activity to provide that support to people. So we both were working in that space and had done for a number of years. And our concern was and still is that there are lots of ways of considering how to support people who are in distress. And so our idea is that we're not just focused on suicide prevention, it's actually about more than that, and perhaps even coming in earlier than things getting to that point in a lot of ways. However, our main concern was noticing that there's a lot of prevention activities out there, and yet continually the statistics show us that the number of people dying through suicide each year here in Australia doesn't seem to be reducing significantly. And then that led to our conversation about what are we missing? And when we say we, it's not just us, but as a community, as a society, professionally, what are we missing? And the conversation sort of flowed from there. And Sonia mentioned earlier, I think that what we're doing is perhaps part of a broader movement, that there are some people out there looking at different ways that are really around human connection and the importance of people connecting with each other, being able to offer a way of listening and connecting rather than trying to fix people or say that what they're thinking or feeling isn't good, therefore it has to be different, but of more starting from the point of how to connect and just be with people. So our conversation rolled from there, and it was really around, and you might like to add in some bits here, but I think where we started was thinking, what's it like when people are just maybe passing each other on the street? Like maybe even in, I think we started talking about even in regional or rural towns. People walking down the main street, they know each other, they stop, and it just starts with a hi, how are you? But the importance of when we say, how are you, how do we mean that? Do we really want the answer? But also for the other person, are they going to be inclined to say a bit more than, oh yeah, I'm fine, thanks, and you both keep walking? We started talking about what would it be like to suggest or maybe talk to people about some ideas on how could you take that conversation just a little bit further. It doesn't have to be big, deep and meaningful, but more a hi, how are you, and really being interested in how that person is. And even if they say, oh yeah, I'm not too bad, to be able to pick up on the, oh, I noticed that you said you're not too bad. And that sort of says that maybe there's something else, And so trying to generate this sort of way of connecting with each other, of really paying attention and listening and pausing. And I guess that's something even for you out there looking at this or listening to that, as you continue to listen to our conversation today, to even notice some of that, like how connected do you feel to what we're saying? Do you have your own ideas about what we're saying? Like, we really want to invite this broader conversation, and that's where we're saying it's maybe part of a broader movement that is out there. So that's where we started from, and then gradually worked on the key components of like what are we talking about. So that's where we got to. We're talking about how do people connect, how do people listen to each other, and then the third point felt important as well, that it's also about how we be with each other. Like, what sort of way of being are we bringing to being with each other? It was like those three things is how we came up with the name.
Yeah, really. Absolutely. And I know we had that conversation, and I was struggling to remember exactly how we did start. And I reflected on the fact that I lost my father, of course, to suicide 4 years ago. And, as a lot of people, when they're bereaved by suicide, are looking for ways to advocate or change or make a difference in this space, led you and I to have numerous conversations. And one of my reflections was probably around more the older adult space. And before my father took his life, we were about to move house. And he, at that stage, I didn't understand why he was so distressed, but he was very distressed about the fact that he was going to have to leave his friends behind. And when we unpacked who his friends were, he spoke about the lady who cut his hair, who allowed him to jump queues, the barista who always welcomed him by his name and remembered what cappuccino it was that he liked, the place where he used to take his clothes in for dry cleaning. And those places didn't feel so significant for me, and I think I was quite dismissive at the time. After we then moved house, and he had the idea of having to create those links again for him was clearly more than he could manage. And it's a bit simplistic because, of course, suicide's about more than one thing, but he made a decision to take his life. And I just want to also say at this point, what we're talking about is not just suicide. It is about that high level of distress. But for me, that's where I came in when we spoke about the idea of connect, listen, and be with. It made sense to me that having connection points within society and people who make others feel like they are noticed and seen and cared about, even if it's just about a coffee and a haircut, actually is incredibly important as a way of reducing distress. And so from a suicide component, where disconnection plays such a big role and shame plays that big role, it made a lot of sense of things we talked about made a lot of sense. That's where the difference could be for people. If we only just are able to take the time to notice and connect with people around us. It's a human thing, and I feel like, we've forgotten how to do it to a large degree. So it's not like it's rocket science what we're talking about, but certainly is something that it seems people, maybe since COVID, maybe even before COVID, we don't do as well, and it's something we're keen to promote now. But once again, just want to stress that it's certainly not just about suicide, but just where my journey has taken me and my interest.
And interesting that you say all of that, because if I think of, and again, to emphasise that, connect, listen and be with isn't just about suicide prevention. In my own situation, so I had an older brother who died through suicide when he was 25 and I was quite young. I was about 11. And as I got older, I remember one of the things that kept popping up for me was the thought of, how does someone get to that point and not feel that they couldn't talk to someone about what's going on? Because for me, with my brother, he seemed fairly outgoing, social, all of those things. It puzzled me and continues to puzzle me in some ways. What are the parts that made it so difficult to feel that some things couldn't be spoken about? And I guess that's what we're saying. And I know when we've, piloted this idea with some people in the community, what we talked about is, it is about things like just waking up and feeling out of sorts and maybe not knowing why. The idea, what that would be like to meet someone during your day and they say, how are you going today? And you feel able to say, actually, I woke up today and I don't know why, but I'm just out of sorts today. Through to, there are changes in my workplace and I'm finding that a bit hard to, like you mentioned before, we've decided that we found a house that we really like and we want to move areas, but I'm feeling a bit sad about leaving the old area, even though I'm excited about where I'm going to. To us, those conversations are important, that people can have them and feel heard by other people. And the being with, I guess, is feeling understood that these things have significance for us and having that heard. So it's like trying to open up. I guess ultimately the idea is that nothing is unspeakable, that we'd like to sort of work towards this idea that we live in a society where nothing's unspeakable and people can at least share openly with each other, or have people where they feel they can do that fairly easily, and that perhaps that ultimately might make a difference at the other end of the scale that we're talking about, where people might start to feel suicidal, that these earlier developing ways of being with each other and connecting can be really important to just build, a better society, a better community.
I'm just going to make sure this doesn't distract our vlog. Interesting, because I know our conversations, we were also clear that this connecting with somebody is not just when somebody is in distress, but an opportunity to share about good things that are going on for people as well. Because I think a lot of people feel like, where do we go to share anything that's going on? Of course, because of the experiences we've had and the background and the, has shaped that lens for us. It's a lot to do with distress, but to emphasize that it can be about sharing really good things in life too. And something we'll deal with in our later vlogs is then, of course, that whole issue of medicalization of suicide, and how as a society we seem to have thrown the burden of high levels of distress and mental health issues and suicide back onto experts who can deal with it, Whereas we're coming from a space of saying, well, actually, we're all experts, and mental health is about distress, people struggling with life issues, and actually being able to share that with somebody and being able to talk it through and feel like somebody actually cares about what you're saying can do a lot to help reduce that distress. If you think about any difficult conversation, if you share it with somebody, almost always makes you feel better. Now, it's not about fixing the problem for somebody, but just really being there and listening to them.
And I think a couple of things are bubbling to the surface for me with you saying that. One is it's about being human.
Yes.
That whatever a person is experiencing, whether it's distress or other sort of, whether it's challenges or good things or a whole range of life experiences, to understand that this is what it is to be human, and to have someone else who's able to meet you in a way that goes, yeah, this is part of being human, rather than, oh, I think you might have a problem there.
Exactly. So we're not labeling.
And I don't feel like I can talk to you about that particular problem.
Because I'm not an expert.
We need an expert. This is about more starting from the point of, oh, actually, tell me more about what's going on for you. And yeah, given your circumstances, I can understand that you might be experiencing that. I'm not going to leave you alone with that. It's okay to talk about it and to share it. And sure, finding places for added support or further connections, that's all part of it.
Absolutely.
But it's not always going to be getting the expert. That we're about sort of just that human connection and just accepting that we're all human. We'll have a really wide range of ways of reacting to life and living, and just going, yeah, that's part of being a human being. Let's not shy away from each other when we're grappling with something, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent.
And I'm so glad you said that, because that being human is a reminder that we can all be struggling with things at various times in our lives, that this is not a space where some people struggle and other people don't struggle. We all have this need to we all go through things that can cause challenges for us in our lives. And of course, I know we keep coming back to sharing when we're in distress. It's probably the easiest example to use. But as humans, we are all distressed. It's not just some people who experience distress. It's something we all do. But the other thing too is the point of difference for us in our listening is, in listening to somebody or encouraging somebody to share the story, we're not going to be the person who is the receiver of the information, and the other person will do all the speaking. We feel strongly that in order to create a connection, it's important for both the listener and the speaker, if you like, to be able to share a little bit of what's going on in their lives, or a way of saying, I can relate to what you're saying. I may not totally understand it. And that's a starting point for a connection. So it takes away this idea of one person being the expert who's in control and has all the answers, and the other person is the person who's struggling. We're saying it's two human beings. One person's going through something that's particularly causing distress, and as the listener, you need to be giving something of yourself to be able to say, I'm with you, I'm here with you.
Yeah, and I think
you'll probably put it better, but yep.
No, I think you put it very well. Like, it's such an important point of what we're talking about, because I was thinking before, that's one bit that is important to emphasize, is that this is about a mutual connection that we realized as we went along with this, that the importance of, even if you're willing to share with someone that you're listening to, of like, oh, I notice as you tell me that's something that reminds me of something that happened to me, but it might also be in the moment of being able to say, oh, I notice that something about that makes me feel quite upset as well, and that I feel upset for you. But being able to do that in a way that is like, and I'm still here for you, and I want to keep staying connected to you. by being able to go back and go, okay, I feel sort of quite sad and a bit upset hearing that from you. I'm wondering what's happening for you, to keep the flow of the connection going. But it isn't about the onus being on you as the listener to be so-called sort of doing something
definitely.
or making it better. It's okay to bring yourself into the picture, and together, it's about that being with. It's together you're able to have the conversation, have that connection that can make quite a difference to how the other person is, or how they walk away and go into the rest of their day. I guess I'd ask people watching this to think about, there probably are occasions where you might have had these sort of interactions, even at a coffee shop. Like if someone really connects with you at a coffee shop, you walk away and you feel different.
Yep.
Something feels different in you. Or a passerby that even you're out walking the dog and they smile and nod, but they might stop for a moment and comment about something, and you have a brief conversation. That's the other thing we talk about. It doesn't have to be big, long conversations.
Or deep and meaningful ones.
But you can go away feeling more connected to the world and people around you from these sort of interactions. And so that's what we're wanting to promote, and I guess experiment with and talk to other people about our ideas on the ways that you can maybe foster this or help build an awareness of this way of being with each other.
And I think you and I have also said that this way of being with each other is what we feel is part of being human, is wanting to connect with other people, wanting to be there for people. And I think people often worry what being there for people means. That means I have to be friends with somebody, or it has to be a long conversation. But actually you can make such a big difference just with and a good way, you raised it with the coffee, is think about those of you who love coffee as much as I do, or hot chocolate as much as Greg does, going to your favorite place. You know, what a difference it makes that they know who you are. And if they don't remember your name, they probably remember your coffee, which makes you want to keep going. That is a connector. For me anyway, I feel like it's a space where somebody knows a little bit about me. I don't feel like I don't feel alone. So it avoids that feeling of disconnection. So yeah, I think we're both quite passionate.
I think the other thing, before we sort of finish off this first little episode of introducing, the other thing that pops up for me, and you might want to add some things, is another component on top of the mutual part is respecting, and I guess I'd call it honouring the other person, that they will do with their life whatever they feel they need to after you've had that interaction.
Yeah.
So this includes, you might have a brief conversation with someone, feels like you've connected well, you've listened well, you've been with them, that you don't have to hold responsibility for that other person's life. It's a way of sort of offering support, but I guess trusting them or giving them their power back. That maybe out of that interaction something will have changed, and they might choose to do something differently afterwards, or they may not decide to do something differently. But it's about honouring and respecting that. And I mean, we realise saying that can be a whole bigger conversation, which we might touch on in another episode, particularly if we start talking about suicide or suicidal distress. But we're talking more here about day-to-day sort of conversations where there might be just something the person's a little bit concerned about, but it's recognising that through a connection and a solid interaction and someone being with them, inevitably they'll probably go away with a slightly different perspective on that. And it's up to them what they do with that. We don't have to be the person that makes them do something different or form a judgment of, oh, well, that's a problem, so you should do this or you should do that. It's actually respecting the other person to that they'll follow the path that they need to follow. We don't need to be the one to change them or make them different from how they are.
Yeah, and I love it because on a really practical level, we can't make people do anything anyway. At the end of the day, we all have to take responsibility for ourselves. And we certainly are not saying that there isn't a space for medical, experts, if you like, psychologists, social workers, psychiatrists. It's not about that, or hospitals. It's about considering that they are not always the best place or the best option for people, and encouraging everyone to step into the space of having some responsibility for touching base with others. Not responsibility, as you say, for fixing other people's problems. And when I run my training, frequently participants will say, tell us exactly what we should say to somebody. Or when they do practice scenarios, they'll inevitably say, why don't you do this? Why don't you try that? And we're saying, we're not asking us, we're saying you don't have to be the expert. You don't have to provide ideas or support or change something. The change will happen simply through the connection that you do, or the time you take to sit and listen to somebody or connect with somebody. So, but we will talk more about that.
Absolutely.
So I'll let you finish it off. Yes.
I'm wondering, it feels like that probably gives you a bit of an idea of what we're about at Connect, Listen, Be With. We are going to do some more episodes where we'll start to break things down a little bit around the idea of connecting, listening, the idea of being with, and a whole range of other topics that we'll come to. I guess we want to invite you, in watching these video blogs, to engage with us a little bit. So we'll be posting these probably on our LinkedIn page. So you can look at our LinkedIn page and maybe see, we often post about other people who are thinking a similar way or doing similar things out there in the world. I guess for us here in Australia, we think it's reasonable to do a shout out to Matt Ball and his team at the Humane Clinic in South Australia, because that has been an influence for us amongst other influences that are out there. But we want you to also, just as we're finishing off, sort of, like I said earlier, think about what it's been like listening to us. Even seeing the way we've had a conversation together. It's a little bit strange doing it on video from our normal conversations, but we wanted to keep it fairly natural. But yeah, just to come away from today thinking about what are the ways you connect with people. Like when you think about those interactions where you are walking down the street, or you walk into work, or you walk into a gym, and just those moments where you go, oh, hi, how are you going? Like, are you willing to just pause for a little bit? And the how are you going is a genuine call to, I actually want to hear how you are today. And then notice how the other person responds. And it might only be a few minutes, but just pay attention to that and sort of notice what that's like. And hopefully we're sort of starting to get across the idea, but we just invite you to think about that.
It might sound goofy, but we'd love to hear. Let us know how it goes. Post things on our LinkedIn page.
And I imagine with these we'll probably use maybe YouTube as well. So there'll be spots where you'll be able to make comments, give us feedback, those sorts of things. But yeah, it's been good.
Great chatting. We're certainly very passionate, as you might have told. Thank you for listening to us. As Greg said, it's supposed to be very casual, so hopefully you're okay with the fact that, we haven't made it look more slick deliberately. And we'll touch base with you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.